October 24, 1944. The Sibuyan Sea. A single vessel cuts through the Pacific waters, carrying the pride of an empire on its steel spine. 900 feet of armor and ambition. The largest warship ever built by human hands. Its name, Musashi. Above the clouds, invisible and patient, another force gathers. Not one ship, but dozens of aircraft. Hunters from the USS Enterprise, the USS Intrepid, and half a dozen carriers scattered across the horizon. They do not see their prey yet, but they know it is there, somewhere beneath the morning haze. This is not a story of courage or cowardice. This is a story of collision between two philosophies of war. One that believed in the fortress that could never fall, and one that believed fortresses were relics of a dying age. The Musashi was designed to be invincible. 46-centimeter guns, each barrel capable of hurling a shell weighing more than a small car over 25 miles. Armor so thick that designers claimed no weapon in existence could penetrate it. The ship itself, a floating city of 2,300 men. But invincibility is a word, and words do not stop steel from bending. In 8 hours, the world will learn a brutal lesson, that no matter how thick the armor, no matter how powerful the guns, the age of the battleship is over, and the sky is the new ocean. To understand what happened on that autumn day in 1944, you must first understand what the Musashi represented. She was not just a ship, she was a symbol. The Yamato-class battleships, Musashi and her sister Yamato, were Japan's answer to the industrial might of the United States. When Japanese naval architects sat down in the late 1930s, they faced an impossible problem. America could build more ships, more carriers, more destroyers. Japan could not match that quantity, so they chose quality. They chose the ultimate weapon. The Musashi displaced 72,800 tons at full load. Her main battery, those 3 triple turrets mounting 18.1-inch guns, were the largest ever installed on a warship. Each shell weighed 3,200 pounds. Her armor belt was 16 inches thick in places, and her designers boasted she could withstand simultaneous attacks from multiple battleships and survive. They were half right. By October 1944, the Pacific War had shifted dramatically. The Japanese Navy, once the terror of the ocean, was now in retreat. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was the last desperate gamble, a plan to smash the American landing forces in the Philippines and turn the tide of the war. The Musashi was the centerpiece of Admiral Kurita's center force, the hammer meant to break through and destroy the vulnerable troop transports. But the Americans had learned their own lessons. Carrier-based aviation had proven itself again and again at Midway, Coral Sea, and the Philippine Sea. Battleships were impressive, but airplanes were lethal, and on that October morning, the American Third Fleet was ready. The crew of the Musashi had been told since the day they boarded her that their ship could not be sunk. Admiral Inoguchi Toshihei, the ship's captain, believed it. So did Vice Admiral Kurita Takeo, who commanded the entire fleet. They had reason to. During her construction, the Musashi had consumed resources meant for entire divisions. Her armor plating alone required steel that could have built 100 tanks, and her anti-aircraft batteries had been reinforced again and again until 130 anti-aircraft guns bristled from her superstructure. She was a floating fortress, and fortresses do not fall easily. As dawn broke on October 24th, the Musashi steamed northeast through the Sibuyan Sea as part of a column of battleships and cruisers. The plan was simple enough: transit the narrow sea, exit through San Bernardino Strait, and fall upon the American landing fleet at Leyte Gulf like wolves upon sheep. The Americans would never expect battleships to break through. They would be caught unprepared, but Kurita knew the Americans had carriers. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, the enemy was watching. Reconnaissance planes had been spotted the day before, which meant contact was inevitable. At 10:10 in the morning, the first wave appeared. 12 dive bombers, specks against the sky. The Musashi's anti-aircraft guns opened up immediately, filling the air with bursts of black smoke and shrapnel. The noise was deafening, and the crew drilled endlessly, moved with machine precision. Gunners tracked targets while damage control teams stood ready and officers shouted coordinates. The first bomb hit and did nothing. It struck the armored deck and bounced off, exploding harmlessly in the water. The crew cheered. The Musashi shuddered, but held. Another bomb. another ricochet. The designers had been right. She was invincible. But then the torpedoes came. American Avenger torpedo bombers, flying low and fast, dropped their payloads into the water. The Musashi's gunners tried to track them, but the planes were too quick, too maneuverable. One torpedo struck the port side, then another. The explosions ripped open compartments below the waterline, and water rushed in, but the ship's internal bulkheads held. Damage control teams sealed the breaches. The Musashi listed slightly, then corrected. Still afloat, still fighting. Admiral Inoguchi sent a message to Kurita. Ship undamaged, proceeding as ordered. It was a lie, but it was also the truth. The Musashi was damaged, but she was not beaten, not yet. The first wave withdrew, the crew breathed, and they had proven their ship's worth. But this was only the beginning. The pilots of Task Force 38 had been hunting the Japanese fleet for days. They called it the turkey shoot, though there was nothing easy about it. Flying over open ocean, navigating by dead reckoning, finding a target, and then surviving long enough to attack it. Carrier aviation in 1944 was brutal, unforgiving work, but the pilots knew this was their chance. The Japanese center force had been spotted with battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and the Musashi, the crown jewel. Commander David McCampbell, one of the war's top aces, had briefed his squadrons the night before. "Hit the big one, the super battleship. Don't waste ordnance on the escorts. We need to stop that ship." The first wave had returned with reports. "She's tough. Our attacks just bounce off. We got some torpedo hits, but she's still moving." So they sent more. The second wave launched at 11:30 with 24 planes. Dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters to suppress anti-aircraft fire. They climbed into the tropical sky, formed up, and headed west. Below them, the ocean stretched endlessly, and somewhere in that blue expanse, the Musashi was waiting. When they found her, she was unmistakable. Massive, dark gray, her superstructure bristling with guns, already trailing a thin wake of oil from earlier hits. The pilots radioed each other, coordinating the attack. Dive bombers would go high, torpedo planes low, split her attention, overwhelm her defenses. The Musashi opened fire. The sky erupted with tracers and shell bursts, the roar of engines and explosions filling the air. Pilots dove through the chaos, lining up their runs. Some didn't make it. Anti-aircraft fire shredded wings and ignited fuel tanks. But the ones who got through made it count. 3 more torpedoes, 2 direct hits on the forward deck. The Musashi's bow dipped lower as she took on water faster than pumps could expel it. But still she moved, still she fought. The second wave withdrew with fuel running low and ammunition spent. As they turned back toward their carriers, one pilot muttered into his radio, "How much can one ship take?" They would find out. By noon, the Musashi had been hit by 8 torpedoes and 5 bombs. Her bow was submerged and her speed had dropped from 27 knots to 22, then 18. Compartments were flooding faster than crews could counterflood to balance the list. But Admiral Kurita still believed. The San Bernardino Strait was close. If the Musashi could just hold on, reach the strait, she could complete the mission. The third wave arrived at 1 in the afternoon. This time, the Americans sent everything. 30 planes, then 40, with waves overlapping. The task force carriers, Enterprise, Essex, Lexington, Franklin, all launching every available aircraft. The orders were clear: sink the Musashi, stop the Japanese fleet. The ship's anti-aircraft fire was still fierce but slower now. Gun crews were exhausted, ammunition was running low, and the Musashi's superstructure was pocked with shrapnel scars. Fires burned in 3 places, and still the planes kept coming. A torpedo struck amidships, then another. The Musashi shuddered like a wounded animal, her list increasing to 10 degrees. Officers in the command tower could feel the deck tilting beneath their feet as damage reports flooded in. Hull breaches, fires, flooding in the engine rooms. The chief engineer reported, "We're losing power." Admiral Inoguchi made a decision. If the Musashi could not complete the mission, she would at least go down fighting. He ordered all remaining anti-aircraft guns to maintain fire and the engineering crew to keep the engines running at any cost. Then he radioed Kurita. "Musashi heavily damaged. Will continue to engage the enemy." The fourth wave hit at 2:30. More torpedoes, more bombs. The Musashi was now listing 15 degrees with water pouring into the lower decks. The forward turrets, those massive 46-centimeter guns that had never engaged a surface target, were useless now. The ship was too damaged to aim, too slow to maneuver. The crew could only endure. At 3 o'clock, the fifth wave arrived. This was the end. Torpedo after torpedo slammed into her hull. The Musashi's armor, designed to be impenetrable, was ripped open in a dozen places. The sea rushed in relentlessly. The list increased to 20 degrees, then 25. The ship was dying, and everyone aboard knew it. At 3:15 in the afternoon, Admiral Inoguchi gave the order to abandon ship. It was not surrender, it was survival. The Musashi was finished. Her engines had stopped, her power was failing, and the list had reached 30 degrees as she settled by the bow. Fires raged unchecked, while explosions echoed from deep within the hull as flooded compartments collapsed under pressure. The crew began to evacuate. Lifeboats were lowered and men jumped into the water, swimming away from the dying giant. Destroyers moved in close, pulling survivors from the sea, but many stayed. Officers, senior crew, men who had served aboard since her commissioning. They would not leave while the Musashi still floated. Admiral Inoguchi was one of them. He stood on the bridge, watching the horizon. The American planes had withdrawn, the battle was over, but the Musashi had not yet sunk. She was listing 40 degrees now, her deck almost vertical. The sea lapped at her funnels while her forward turrets were submerged. And still she held on. At 7:20 in the evening, as the sun set over the Sibuyan Sea, the Musashi finally capsized. She rolled slowly, gracefully, like a whale turning in the deep. Her hull, scarred and broken, rose above the waterline one last time before slipping beneath the waves. 2,300 men had been aboard when the battle started. 1,023 went down with the ship. The sea closed over her. Admiral Kurita, watching from his flagship, wept. The plan was ruined. The center force had lost its greatest weapon, and the Americans would not be caught by surprise. The gamble had failed, but the Musashi had proven something. She had taken 19 torpedoes and 17 bombs before she sank, more punishment than any ship in history. She had fought for 8 hours against waves of attackers. She had been almost invincible, almost. The wreck of the Musashi lay untouched for 71 years. 1 kilometer below the surface of the Sibuyan Sea, in the darkness where no light reaches, the ship rested. Her hull, still massive even in destruction, became a tomb. Coral grew on her guns, fish sheltered in her compartments, and the ocean reclaimed her. In March of 2015, an expedition funded by Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, found her. Using remotely operated vehicles equipped with sonar and cameras, the team descended into the abyss. What they found was haunting. The Musashi's hull was largely intact. Her turrets, those legendary 46-centimeter guns, were still in place. Debris scattered across the seafloor, shoes, helmets, personal effects, all silent witnesses to the men who had served aboard. The discovery reignited debate. Was the Musashi a symbol of Japanese engineering brilliance or a monument to strategic failure? She had been designed to win battles, but never engaged her main guns in combat. She had been built to be unsinkable, but she sank. She had cost a fortune in resources that Japan could not afford to waste. But there is another way to see her. The Musashi proved that courage and engineering alone cannot win wars, that no matter how powerful a weapon, it is only as effective as the strategy that employs it. The Japanese believed in the battleship, a weapon of a previous age. The Americans believed in the aircraft carrier, the weapon of the future. On October 24, 1944, the future won. The Musashi's crew fought with everything they had. They did not flee or surrender until the ship itself could fight no more, and they earned the respect of their enemies. American pilots who attacked her later said, "We had never seen anything so tough." But respect does not stop the ocean from rising. There is a photograph taken in 2015 from the submersible that found the Musashi. It shows one of her gun turrets, covered in rust and coral, still pointing toward the surface, as if, even now, the ship was defiant, still ready to fight a battle it lost 70 years ago. The sinking of the Musashi marked the end of an era. The age of the battleship, the idea that bigger guns and thicker armor could decide wars, was over. The future belonged to speed, mobility, and air power. The lesson was learned in wreckage and memory, in ships like the Musashi, and in the stories of the men who served aboard them. History does not remember failure kindly, but it remembers courage. And the Musashi, for all her flaws, for all the strategic mistakes that led to her construction and deployment, was a testament to human ambition, to the belief that we can build something so strong, so perfect, that nothing can destroy it. The ocean proved otherwise. Today, the Musashi rests in silence, a monument not to invincibility, but to the limitations of even our greatest creations. The men who built her were brilliant, the men who sailed her were brave, but neither brilliance nor bravery can change the tide of history. And in the end, the sky conquered the sea.